Hey there, all you ghouls and goblins. Radio 85.9 proudly presents Horror Zoid with your hosts, Stevie Scares and Natalie Nightmare. Today's episode is brought to you by Booby Bun Cakes. Stop by the bakery and show your Horror Zoid ticket stub for a 25% off your next Booby Bun Cakes purchase. Welcome to another episode of Horror Zoid, everybody. It's good to be back with you. Had a bit of a week off there. Hope you didn't miss us too much.
You didn't introduce us, Stevie.
I'm Stevie Scares.
And I'm Natalie Nightmare.
Sorry for forgetting the intros. I'm just really excited to be back for another episode.
We have a couple weeks off, and this is what you come back to.
That's
We're just
right.
in shambles.
Just fucking manic pixie energy. That's what we have right now. But today we're coming back with a special episode. It is our first double feature. Double feature, basically, we went to the movies this weekend. We saw two movies, and we really want to fucking talk about them.
Yes.
So that's our double feature for today. And today's double feature, we saw Barbarian.
And we saw Pearl.
And we legitimately saw these on the same day. Mm-hmm. And if you've never done that, where you've seen multiple movies in one day, I highly recommend it.
It's honestly the best experience for the theater. You don't just go to one, you go to two. Plan two.
Yes, plan two. And if they're in the same genre, like horror movies, like what we saw with Barbarian and Pearl, very much in the same ilk, it makes for a much more pleasurable experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, you get that little reprieve in the middle, go get you a snack, some McDonald's, not sponsored, and then you go back in for the second movie and you're all fueled up and ready to go.
That's exactly what we did.
Totally fun.
Yes. And as we mentioned, our double feature this week was Barbarian and Pearl. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with the movie we saw first that day. It was an early afternoon matinee, and we saw Barbarian. Barbarian, of course, directed and written by Zach Kreger. If you feel like you recognize that name, it is because he is one of the founding members of the sketch comedy group, The Whitest Kids You Know.
Heck yeah.
So if you were a fan of Whitest Kids You Know, which I loved Whitest Kids You Know. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite shows, one of my favorite sketch comedy shows. Zach is from that. It was Zach and Trevor. Trevor, unfortunately, we lost recently. R.I.P. And Zach is continuing the legacy of Whitest Kids You Know, and he's doing it amazing because what Barbarian delivered was something that you will not believe, in my opinion.
It happens to you.
That's exactly it. It's a movie that happens to you.
Yes, it was phenomenal. So for probably, because obviously it just recently came out, for about a week I was avoiding all of my horror friends on TikTok every time I'd see Barbarian, unless they were saying there was no spoiler. Shout out to a couple of dudes named Josh on there who are always really good about saying if there's going to be spoilers and trigger warnings, which Barbarian definitely has some.
There's definitely some trigger warnings. We will get to those as we review the film.
But I had no idea. There was nothing I knew other than the first trailer that we saw, a couple little things along the way. But I'm not one of those people, honestly, neither of us are, the ones who just go to seek out every bit of information before a movie comes out. I want to be as surprised as possible.
Yeah, and lately we've talked about it. The trailers oftentimes ruin a lot of these films.
Yeah, we've had a few of those in the last year, and I feel like there's been a lot of really good surprise. Nope, for example.
Yeah.
One of the best, promotions before the movie, even with the trailers, because we still had no idea some of the scenes that we witnessed in that movie. We never had a clue that they were involved in the movies.
No, and ultimately the plot of the film and the main evil, I guess you'll call it, at the center of it was totally a mystery.
And that's how the Barbarian movie was for us, because we watched a trailer.
Yeah, I think the only thing I knew was that it was something to do with Airbnb. That's all I knew.
Airbnb and the beautiful Bill Skarsgård.
I didn't even know Bill Skarsgård was in it. I'm not gonna lie. I think in the trailer that I watched, it was just the main woman played by Georgina Campbell.
Yes. So honestly, funny conversation before we really dive deep into this. I was talking about this movie yesterday at work with my boss because she doesn't do a lot of scary movies, but she loves listening to me talk about them.
She loves the passion that you bring to horror movies, and who doesn't?
Yes.
That's why you guys are listening, because you like our passion about horror movies.
And the fact that we have a few people that we know that aren't really big into horror, the really scary stuff, or extreme horror fans, or whatever you want to call it, for them, their scariest movie that they probably watch is like Beetlejuice, and they don't go
Poltergeist, maybe.
Right.
That's the extreme.
Right. And
I'm hardcore. I sat through Poltergeist. Did you know the skeletons are real? Hey. Yes, Grandma. I knew the skeletons were real. Thank you.
Exactly. See, and that's a lot to do with ratings, which we'll get to another time. But I'm telling her about it because it's just this wild premise. You get in the trailer, you have this girl showing up to this Airbnb late at night. She knocks on the door. She's trying to figure out what's going on. There's no key in the lockbox for her to get in. And then there's someone inside, and it's a guy who's also booked the Airbnb, and there's this mix up. Like, that's all we really, really got for the trailer. And then you go and see it, and it just knocks you upside the head completely. And even when you think you kind of are starting to figure out that first act, you're not.
Yeah, it's before we get into the nitty gritty, the meat of the film. One thing I want to talk about is I compare this to another film that came out earlier this year called Fresh.
Yes.
And if you saw Fresh, Barbarian and Fresh, really at the heart of it, are two completely different movies, but they have this similar thing. They start out with, you're watching the story, the narrative unfolds, and then like literally at the end of that first act, that first half hour, you are met with a complete tonal shift in the film.
Yeah.
And
they do it in very different ways, but absolutely, if you've seen both of these movies, and I guess we could probably kind of say without spoiling, and I mean, we're probably going to spoil more anyway, so spoiler warning from here on out for Barbarian. But after your first act, which we'll get into, it does go into a complete shift. Think deep underground, scary, horrifying, and all of a sudden you're in a convertible on a highway by the beach.
Yeah, in the middle of California. Right. It's beautiful.
Whereas Fresh, you feel like you're watching this romance movie.
Yeah, like, a romantic comedy. It feels like a rom-com.
Super cute. The girl that's not, she's trying to get out in the dating scene, but, you go through all these guys, and then there's this one that just seems to be going
fucking Winter Soldier.
So
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
If I fucking met Winter Soldier in the middle of a grocery store and he started telling me about cotton candy grapes, I mean, my panties would be wet immediately. I don't give a fuck.
As a girl who fucking loves cotton candy, I'd be like, sir.
Yeah.
Let's get married.
Mr. Sebastian Stan, can you calm down, save some pussy for the rest of us? Good God. That guy, fucking terrific. I love Fresh.
Fresh is a delight.
So we're sidebar,
God,
of course.
We're getting off.
We are getting off topic, but yes, but Fresh and Barbarian, two movies I compare, and I find it funny that they're released within about 6 months of each other.
Yeah.
And they share so many similarities in the sense that you are getting one film, and then like that first act ends and you realize it's a completely different film than what you were watching.
Yeah, it's not the normal pace of storytelling. Yep. It's literally a hard stop shift.
Yeah. So we'll get into Barbarian finally. So Barbarian, essentially the story, as we're beating around the bush, it is about a woman played by Georgina Campbell. Her name is Tess. And Tess pulls up to an Airbnb. It's the middle of the night. It's raining. She looks in the lockbox, looks for the key, and there's no key. And then she realizes as she's about to leave that there's somebody in the Airbnb already that she has booked and is supposed to be in. So she goes up. She knocks on the door. The man that answers the door is the lovely Bill Skarsgård.
Yes.
And
Keith.
Keith. Yes, Keith, the worst male name in the history of male names.
Not true. It's just it's plain.
That's actually a fact by Family Guy. Family Guy said it's the ugliest male name, and I go with what Family Guy says. But yes, so Keith answers the door to Tess, and they discover through their conversation that they both booked the same Airbnb, and the owner and the property managers didn't realize this double booking.
Yes.
So Tess is about to leave, and Keith says, "No, don't leave.
It's cold and rainy.
Right.
Use the phone."
And it's going to take you forever to find a room because apparently there's a big medical conference in town. So, you're better off just trying to stay here and find something in the morning." And they agree to that. And the whole time this is happening and unfolding, you get this sense of unease immediately. And I want to say really big kudos to Zach Kreger and what he did in this film, because he takes somebody, Bill Skarsgård, who, if you hear the name Bill Skarsgård associated with a horror movie, your first thought is a villain.
Yeah.
And it's Pennywise, of course. You think Bill Skarsgård, Pennywise, one of the biggest villains in the last 10 years in horror. So immediately you're just put off because the story just doesn't add up. You're like, you double booked an Airbnb.
Girl, and this is something that I circled around and lost track of myself because I get really excited. The whole girl coming up to the B&B, and there's a guy, and he's like, "It's okay if you want to come in, and it's not safe to sit out in your car." As I was telling my boss, there's a horror movie from like 20 years ago at this point, or a romance movie that has the exact same premise, but they fall in love. But obviously, since we have the setting of a horror movie like Barbarian with a dark, rainy night and weird, ominous sounds in the openings, like
terrific sound
start.
editing, sound mixing, score, everything works perfectly audio wise. But
you are put off as a horror fan by seeing, even though he's beautiful and handsome and he's a great guy, seeing Bill Skarsgård, you're like, oh, I feel like he's going to be a villain. He's a villain type a lot of times.
And I want to give another shout out to Zach Kreger and his direction and the cinematography, which is done by Zach Cooperstein, as I'm seeing here. Because what they do, another thing that they do that you and I haven't really talked about too much, is the way they film him. There's always a darkness to Keith.
Yeah.
He's always shot in darkness. He's always framed darkly. It's very
the
intelligent.
Lighting is very, very good.
Yeah.
Because whenever you have someone standing in a doorway with light coming from behind them, it makes them more ominous because you get these sharp shadows.
Yes. It's a very film nerdy kind of thing to pay attention to, but I highly recommend, if you're on your second viewing of Barbarian, pay attention to that.
Yeah,
because I noticed it immediately.
I agree. And you have Tess, who's this bright character who's in town for an interview,
and she's filmed
and
very
she's
light.
Filmed with full face of light, no matter where she is.
Yeah, it's almost like Bill Skarsgård is always in the shadows. He's shaded. Tess is very bright. The light is always shining on her. The light is always coming through the window on her face, yet it doesn't feel unnatural.
Right.
So it's just like the way they've positioned the characters in very natural lighting works superbly.
Yeah.
Because you get the feeling every time it shifts back from Tess to Keith, to Keith. It is it's a visual shift each time the camera cuts to each character.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something I try to, as being an older horror fan, pay attention when I see these movies. But the whole time you kind of get this weird dynamic with them. And my favorite thing about this movie, probably as a whole, is something that is a true horror to a lot of women, and being very untrusting of men, especially in a situation where you're alone and you're vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerability is a huge key to the storytelling aspect of the film.
Yes. And the fact that you have Keith, he's trying to be helpful. He's like, you can sit inside and make calls instead of sitting in your car. He's trying to think of her safety from the get-go. And everything he does moving forward, you can sleep here, you can sleep in the bedroom, you can lock the bedroom door, I'll sleep on the couch. He makes her tea and she doesn't drink it, and then he offers her wine after she showers, but he sits there and waits and doesn't open it because he knows that she's not trusting of a drink that's been opened in the hands of a man.
And he even points out, I noticed that you didn't drink the tea I made you, and I wondered if you didn't drink it because you thought you didn't watch me make it. You didn't watch me make the tea. And it's so good because it's like you're either thinking to yourself, there's no middle ground with this guy.
He's really smart and knows what to say to make a woman trust him, or it's just this weird mind game with you.
Exactly.
As you watch it.
He's either the nicest human being possible or he is a fucking sex offender. Like
Yeah.
there's no gray area.
No.
That's the thing. It's like there's no ambiguity, yet there's so much ambiguity. It's
Yeah.
like he's not in the middle.
Yeah.
But you don't know what side he falls on. And the whole time, literally, and I'm just going to speed forward through the plot here because it's pretty basic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trusting of each other, yet they have some moments of intimacy where where they learn to trust each other, and they actually become fond of each other, and they develop this friendship. All the while, you do still get this element in the back of your head as an audience member, and you see it with Tess. There are moments where she still doesn't completely trust him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, weirdly enough, she finds this basement. Then in the basement, she finds a sliding door that is hidden. Behind the sliding door, she finds a bedroom with a dirty, disgusting, nasty mattress, blood, handprints on the wall, and a lone VCR. Mm-hmm. Just off-putting.
And this is while I think she like gets back because she does stay the night. She goes to her interview the next day and comes back.
She has a job interview, yes. And we also find out in the process that she is in an abusive relationship with this guy who is trying to continue to get a hold of her.
Yes.
So not only is Bill Skarsgård an element of danger in the movie, but you have this woman's whole life and past is also a small element that we have to deal with too.
Men's sucking is kind of a big theme, really.
Men are evil.
No pun intended. Ooh, just thought about that. But the room that she finds, she kind of gets freaked out, but she gets locked in the basement because the door tries to get his attention when he gets home, gives the key back, and she's like, there's a fucking room down there. We gotta fucking leave. And at this point, she just wants her to leave. She wants him to leave. Get out of this house, both of them. And he wants to go look at it and
because he also doesn't trust her either. He's
because he's like, I can't just take your word for it that there's a weird room with a bed and a camera. Yeah. And, it's down in this basement.
Yeah, that's a pretty tall tale. That's a pretty far-fetched story. I mean, I think anybody in that position would be like, I don't know you, and that sounds crazy.
And you're telling me there's a weird dungeon room.
I got to see this for myself.
Hidden wall in the basement.
Yeah. So he does.
He does. He goes down there, and she doesn't want to go down there, but ultimately has to. Braces the door that has closed
because he doesn't respond right away.
Yeah, he doesn't respond.
Yeah.
And you hear him say, she's like, did you find it? And he's like, yes. And then she's waiting, and then he's quiet, and he's not responding.
Yeah.
So she goes back down, goes down through the hallway, looks in the room, but then notices at the end of the hallway, there's this other weird door that kind of blends in, and she opens it, and it's just more brick stone stairs going down even deeper in the ground.
Yeah, even farther. And this movie takes place in Detroit. Yeah. This movie takes place in Detroit, Michigan. Old Detroit, where these houses have probably been there for long time right now. So you've got so this is old neighborhood. These stairs clearly lead to an underground tunnel system that was probably utilized for various things back in the day. Mm-hmm. And down there in this tunnel, she keeps hearing Keith yell for help, and she is going to help him. And down there, she sees cages. She sees a weird room with a bed in it and a VCR TV combo thing, playing some weird thing about breastfeeding.
Yep.
And she keeps going farther, and finally she runs into Keith, who looks like he's been hurt. And he's out of breath, and she's out of breath, and he's like, he keeps telling her, there's somebody else down here. There's somebody else down here. She's like, what do you mean? What do you mean there's somebody else down here? And then that is when Keith is...
oh, gosh. I just got goosebumps all over. Because you're already frantic. Because you're like, no, dumb bitch, get out of the basement. Don't go down there. Don't go further. He's trying to get you.
Yeah.
And, you find him, and he's like, there's someone down here. And she's like, well, let's go back this way. And he's like, we can't go back that way. That's where it was. You need to come this way. And then even then, you're like, don't go with him. And all of a sudden, this tall, naked, creepy-ass lady comes from behind the tunnel, screaming, grabs his head, slams it repeatedly against the wall, and you realize the whole time you could have trusted him.
He was actually a good guy. And
that's
probably the best story in this movie. And not that the rest of the film is...
No, but it's just my favorite. It's a very subtle, realistic horror within a horror, and the whole vibe of it just makes you more nervous knowing it's a horror movie, but also having this, and it makes you uncomfortable on such a real level before you get this what the fuck moment in these weird catacombs.
Yeah. Yep. So, and as Natalie said, and as we talked about earlier, at that is when the film shifts completely. You get Bill Skarsgård slammed repeatedly into a wall, bloody mess, head caved in, brains all over the place, beautiful scene, and then it cuts to, for some reason, Justin fucking Long.
We love him.
Horror Scream King at this point.
Yes, he is a Scream King.
He's a Scream King. We still have to do an episode on Scream
Hell
Kings, and
yeah.
we will. But Justin Long driving in a convertible, singing along to a happy song when he gets a phone call from his agent, and we realize he is a actor in Hollywood who's on a sitcom. Mm-hmm. And they tell him that his career is now in jeopardy because he is being accused of sexual assault from a co-star. And he then at that point, everybody drops him. His agent drops him. His manager drops him. His financial wealth person drops him. And we realize that
I want to be that rich.
Yeah, exactly.
That I pay the people who watch my finances
just to watch my money.
It. Yeah, just look at my money.
Yep. And with we find out that he actually is a landlord and investment property owner, and who owns houses in Detroit, Michigan.
Wow.
So he goes to Michigan because his plan is he's going to sell off this property, make some money to pay his legal fees that he's going to have to incur from being sued for sexual assault allegations. And we find out that one of the properties he owns is the house that is the Airbnb that we saw in the first half of the film.
Yes.
So we go in, and Justin Long's character,
his name's AJ.
AJ Gilbride. So AJ goes home, and he is now staying in the Airbnb house so that he can get it fixed up and sell it. And he is just obsessed with getting this house ready to sell it. We'll get to that here in a sec because it's one of the funniest details in the movie. But AJ is cleaning up the place. And we start to learn that he is not innocent in his sexual assault crimes.
He meets up with his in-town friend, goes out, and he's like, they have this really misogynistic, dude, you can tell me, just be open. I'm not going to judge you. Definitely podcaster moment guy.
Yeah.
Not us.
Yeah.
But this weird conversation, and they're drunk, and they're in a bar, and he's like, I mean, maybe she wasn't saying yeah at first. She was saying no. But then
But I convinced
her.
Yeah.
And you're
it's
just like,
fucking
ew,
disgusting.
okay, so he is.
It's one of the most disgusting scenes in film that I can remember recently.
I love
where
Justin
he's basically
Long, and kudos for going immediately into, okay, no, this is he's a shithead.
Yes.
He's a piece of shit.
But Justin Long plays this role so beautifully because he comes off like such a nice, affable guy, and he so well, and he's done it in movies before, but he so well plays the asshole AJ.
So we get that he's not innocent.
He's not innocent. He probably raped this girl.
Yeah. And so then you're like, well, I guess whatever for him. I don't care about him at this point. But to push through this a little faster, he does end up finding this thing in the basement.
Finds the room, finds the stairs.
Finds the room, finds the stairs. Mama, or the mother, I think is what they call her, the mother.
Yes. Because he ends up in a pit with Tess.
With Tess, who's been there for like 2 weeks.
2 weeks at this point, we believe, yes. And we find out that she's Mama because she puts a bottle down into this pit where AJ and Tess are now stranded.
Yes.
And Tess says, she just wants you to be her baby. So Tess, who's been through this for 2 weeks, we realize that she has just been living off of whatever is in this bottle.
Yeah,
I don't even want to think about it.
It's like a giant. It's like it almost reminds me of those like piggy banks you'd see as a kid. It's just this giant bottle with a rubber nipple on it, and the mother just reaches through like the cage top and like holds it down like a hamster in a cage, and is just like, eat this.
Yes.
And I was actually looking up. I was curious who played her, because they are very tall, and
it's a man, I believe.
Yeah, his name is Matthew Patrick Davis. I'm not sure what else he's ever done, but he's amazing.
He's very Javier Botet-like.
Yeah.
The way he's very similar to Javier's movements.
If you look at the cast pictures of them lined up, he's a couple heads taller than, Justin Long.
And we love us some Javier Botet. So that is a compliment from us to compare him to Javier.
I want to see him and more. I love like the tall, villainous characters in movies. But they do, and this is back to the cinematography, which is consistently beautiful in every angle and every movement of this movie. But a lot in the tunnels, I noticed that they do kind of film from a lower angle, probably to make the mother look a bit more big and menacing, because it makes you feel like you're lower to the ground, you're scared. And again, that adds to the mood. Like it's shot in a way I haven't seen in forever. To me, this movie's a fucking masterpiece.
It is. It is visually stunning as well as a brilliant story.
Yeah.
But we also, it's at that point or not long after we see them in the tunnel where we get part 3 of the story, and we go back even farther and we see that the house was owned in the 80s by a man named Frank.
Played by Richard fucking Brake.
Richard fucking Brake is a legend, and he will probably get his own episode of the podcast here before long too, because he's just somebody we absolutely adore.
And he's great at playing villains, and this is probably the most disgusting of all. And you have very little screen time with him, but you basically gather that
I'd say he has like 15 to 20 minutes of screen time total.
Yeah, it's
not
very
much.
minimal, and pretty much there's not really a scene with him that's uncomfortable, but they are really good at letting you know what this man's done. So you figure out easily, as this movie plays out, that he's a serial killer. He abducts young, pretty women he targets, and takes them back and tortures them, sexually assaults them, has had children with them, and then he's had children with the children, and
children with the children, and
so on
and so forth.
on.
And
so
that's
how you get the mother.
Yeah, that's what we get. Yeah, the mother, mama, whatever you want to call her. That's what you get.
No, she's credited. He's credited. I don't want to mess up the pronouns because I do care about those. So he is listed as playing the mother.
The mother.
So I guess the mother and Mama from Mama should get together and have Ghost and
that's a fucking
baby,
crossover
right?
I want to see. Mama versus the mother. Yeah. Fuck yeah. I'd watch that. Released on Mother's Day.
Yes.
It has to be.
All right, there's our new pick.
This summer,
it's
Mama versus the Mother. Coming Mother's Day 2023. Well, you heard it. That's the next big film. But yes, so we learned about Richard Brake, had the house in the 80s. He's tortured women in there, and he's sired children with the children, sired children with the children's children.
He's the most despicable character.
And Justin Long and Tess get separated. They get out, they get separated, and Justin Long's character, AJ, ends up finding a room in the caverns that is home to Frank, who is now very elderly, decrepit, and bedridden.
Yeah.
AJ finds tapes where he's filmed
he
all the torture of these women
very quickly, and obviously doesn't want anything to do with him. I'm not going to spoil everything, so I don't want to spoil this whole scene. But you do see Frank. He does not last long, but he is very old at this point.
Yeah. And then so AJ takes the gun, and he is now traveling through the tunnels with a gun. He's armed. Tess actually gets out. And she goes to the police, who don't believe her story, of course. But she takes it upon herself that since AJ's still down there with the mother, she has to save him.
Which at this point, none of us really care if he's saved or not, because no matter what's happening,
Tess is the only one who cares if he lives or dies.
He's really shitty, but she doesn't know that.
She doesn't. So Tess goes back to save him. They manage to escape with the help of this homeless man
who's tried to warn her in the beginning. We see him in the beginning. He tries to warn her, but she thinks he's a homeless crackhead trying to attack her. Yeah.
And then we find out he was trying to help her the entire time because he knows what's going on in that house.
Yeah.
And he even says that she's not the worst thing in that house, referring to Frank also being down there. And he says she comes out at night.
Yeah.
Which we kind of get the hint that something comes out at night because Tess's door is
there's
opened.
A couple weird scenes earlier. Yeah. There's kind of creaks and things going on in the house at night, and you're at that point worried that it's Keith trying to be creepy and getting into her room, but he's just asleep on the couch. Yep. So there's something there, but we have no idea what. But yeah, so it comes back. She decides she's just going to go back down there and get AJ. She basically does, and they get out and they try to run down to the safe area where the homeless guy has told them about. So they're there, they're chillaxing by the fire.
And he even tells them though. He's like, she can't get in here. And they're like, how are you so sure? And he says, I've been here for 15 years.
Yeah.
And she's never gotten in once.
Yeah. And
Cue.
of course, she comes in.
Literally, as soon as he fucking says that, he's like, she's never gotten in here in 15 years. And then, bam, she just busts through the fucking wall.
Yes.
Like the Kool-Aid man. And she's just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And just fucks up this homeless man.
Yeah.
Proceeds to fuck him up in ways that a human being should not be fucked up upon.
Because she's big and scary and strong. So you get these two.
She's got that massive fucking
out.
body and strength.
Oh, God, she's really cool looking.
Her character design, her creature design. I think we can call her creature at this point. Her creature design is fucking tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have Tess and AJ. They're running up the stairs, this kind of building that they're kind of in and around. And the mother climbs up to them. And then you get another lovely character tone for Justin Long's character AJ, who just moments before made it seem like he was
made a very impassioned speech.
Yeah, maybe I'm just a good guy who did a bad thing and needs to fix stuff.
And you realize he's gonna get this moment of redemption, which he does. He has this moment where he could be redeemed.
But he decides he's gonna try to sacrifice Tess to get away.
He literally throws her off the fucking roof of this building.
Yes.
And the mother jumps after her, so you realize at that point, oh my God, he's just killed her, Tess, and the mother.
Yes.
And he got away. And and you see him walk down the stairs. He looks and he sees both of them lying on the ground. But the mother was able to catch Tess in midair and turn her body so that she took the brunt of the fall and Tess was safe. Mm-hmm. Tess was still obviously hurt because she just fell off of a fucking building. But Tess actually wakes up. AJ sees this. And it then goes into a complete fucking spiral where he
slipped. I was trying to grab you and move you out of the way.
Oh my God, he's
you were so
fucking
heavy,
disgusting.
You know?
He's
and
so
like,
fucking disgusting.
God damn, he's awful. And I'm not gonna give away the full ending. Just know that Tess is a final girl.
Tess is a final girl. Mama fucking. So the mother fucking is not dead either.
There's some weird shit going on for the end of the movie.
But yes, Tess, our final girl, a terrific entry into the final girl canon. Love it. We're going to have to do another episode of Final Girls, definitely, and Tess is definitely going to be on there because Georgina Campbell, terrific performance as Tess. Bill Skarsgård, terrific performance as Keith. Justin Long, terrific performance as AJ. And Richard Brake, terrific as Frank.
Yeah.
One of the best casts.
Yeah, the cast is phenomenal, and I think something that just the whole time I was just in complete awe of the way the movie looks. There's this beautiful scene that I love where it almost goes to like first-person shooter, like video game vibe.
Oh, down in the tunnels, yes.
Down in the tunnels where he's got one hand out with a knife in it and the other hand out with the flashlight in it, and it feels like you have to control it or something. And you get all these beautiful camera angles, whether they're up high, whether they're low, the way things are lit, the way it pans through car doors. Everything about the way this movie is filmed is just absolutely breathtaking and horrifying when it needs to be.
It is. I think we've said so many wonderful compliments about this film, but it deserves all of them.
It does.
Because it just delivers in all the ways. I think the reason it's received such a positive reception from the horror community is, dare I say, this is the movie that horror fans have wanted for a long time.
Right. And it's something new that almost feels familiar, but it's still something shocking. And I love it whenever a movie can keep me surprised. I'm still going to enjoy a movie if I feel like it's kind of predictable, but there's something special whenever a movie comes out like this, and I literally cannot predict the next scene.
No,
the entire time.
And I love what this movie did for me personally that made me love it in the same vein of what you're talking about, is it made me stop trying to figure it out. Like you realize you realize you've been bested. You realize that Zach Kreger has fucking beat you.
Yeah.
You as an audience member, if you're trying to figure it out, he just, like, at the end of that first act, you're like, fuck it. I don't know where it's going, and I just let me go. Just take me with you.
And this will bring us full circle to what I said is, whenever you stop thinking like that when you're watching a movie and your brain shuts off, the movie happens to you.
Yeah. Weed helps too.
And I think the only thing, and like we kind of mentioned it as we were going through the movie, the only moment that I had any prediction for, almost by horror movie trope, is when you're like, they're never gonna get in here. And then it gets in there. Like that scene whenever the homeless guy's like, oh, she can't get in here.
Right. It's not that you can't use horror tropes.
Right.
It's just you have to use them correctly.
Right.
And you have to use them from the perspective of a 2022 film, because that's the thing. I think like the people who try to use horror tropes, like, and the ones that are laughed at now, are the ones where it's like it's either too tongue in cheek or it's too serious, and it's like, if you're gonna use a horror trope, this is how you use it. It's a little tongue in cheek. It comes right at the end of the movie. It's not focused or fixated on too long.
It felt like it's put in with purpose. It's like when you have a movie with a tongue-in-cheek trope. When it's in there for a reason and it feels like it's supposed to be part of the movie, even though it's a trope, I love it. And I fucking love horror movie tropes.
Yeah.
I love it whenever I get surprised and you have a movie where...
one of our favorite movies
and they
is Scream.
open up the mirror, right?
It's full of horror movie tropes.
But like the whole thing of like opening the bathroom mirror and you're like, oh my God, someone's gonna be in the mirror. And then they close it and there's not someone.
I fall for that shit every time.
Like, the first few times you're surprised, but sometimes movies still do that so well that it actually scares the shit out of you.
Yep.
So I think it just, again, it depends how you use those. And I think that there was a lot about Barbarian that was... again, it was surprising. It was new. It just felt like an experience. But again, something familiar, and probably part of that is with the casting, because I've been a fan of Justin Long since I was a teenager.
Yep.
Even though I will not own or care to watch it, and it's kind of a ruined experience, but I saw Jeepers Creepers, and that was one of my early horror movies, and I loved him. He was amazing.
A lot of people our age grew up with Jeepers Creepers.
Unfortunately,
yeah. And it's been tainted, but
I
think this is like this
but
was Justin Long saying like
how amazing he was in that movie, and the ending was iconic.
Oh yeah. Just it's like this is up there as one of his best horror performances. I wrote on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter at Sleepless with Steven, in addition to all the horror Zoid pages, we're just going to throw more at you to follow.
Yeah.
But if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I broke it down. I mean, he's been in some of the best horror movies ever. Jeepers Creepers, Drag Me to Hell, Afterlife, Barbarian, and Tusk. I mean, 5, like...
And the thing is about Drag Me to Hell, even though he's not obviously the prime focus and he's, in it enough... But
he's a final boy.
He's a final boy, first off.
Yeah.
And that ending, when he's staring down at the tracks and his face gets all red and his eyes tear up.
All watery.
He's amazing. I love that. It's one of my favorite horror movie endings anyway.
Yeah.
And I realize he has a lot of shitty endings when you look at it, because Drag Me to Hell, Tusk, Barbarian.
Afterlife.
Yeah.
He always has a bad ending.
Go through his eyes.
He never fucking has a happy ending. If he does another horror movie, which I hope he does, he needs to have a happy ending.
Yeah, Drag Me to Hell might be
the happiest of the endings. He just watches his girl get pulled into hell.
Well, I was gonna say, yes, he makes it out of that movie. Obviously traumatized, having just this. Oh, my girlfriend's having, or my fiance's having these little issues, and oh, everything's fine, and oh, she got dragged to hell. But like, that's one of those movies I think that I might throw on our list that we've been talking about a future episode of doing. Movies we wish had sequels, and I would love to see him in a sequel.
I would love to see a Barbarian sequel. Like, I think it, and now what we're seeing nowadays is like movies that are establishing universes that don't necessarily fall into the same genre.
Right.
I would love like a black comedy about AJ.
Oh yeah.
Where we examine kind of his shitty behavior. He's a
character that you love to hate because his character is frustratingly charismatic, being a sitcom actor, but obviously you absolutely hate him.
Yeah. I'd love to see a Frank movie. Like, I mean, like, this movie could spawn not sequels, but I really feel like it could establish a Barbarian universe.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there could be something more to that. Or, we're just too hopeful because Frank's story is really gross how you get this.
Oh, I think a Frank movie is
but
warranted, and I think Richard Brake would do it in a fucking heartbeat.
I think so. And I feel like if it was done, with the same people, Zach Kreger doing it, I know something that was really amazing in this movie is the trigger warnings are more so the discussion of sexual assault and incest. You never see anything. There's maybe 5 seconds you kind of hear like a girl screaming whenever AJ's character plays the VHS tape and like sees what this
and there's
Frank
the scene
done.
where Frank goes down the stairs and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean there's some screams, there's some implications and stuff there, but
I think
it's not
that's how
overtly
you do
graphic on those things. You're right. It's more of a discussion of sensitive topics.
Right, because this is, I'll say it pretty short, and I know it's a huge discussion, especially with women like myself with horror movies, is I don't think that sexual assault should be your main point of a movie. Looking at movies like I Spit on Your Grave. I don't want that. I have no problem with a character that is despicable and disgusting because it makes a great serial killer. And as most women are fans of true crime, we all understand the horror of it. And I think that's something with Frank's character is he is a very disgusting and vile serial killer. So seeing a movie with him would be fascinating. I just know that it would be way better to obviously not show the disgusting things that he does, which would be difficult, but also a fascinating movie.
Well, and I think
especially to see how he got away with it and never was caught.
Exactly. That's more what I would like to see is just like the game of cat and mouse, almost like what Fincher did with Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love that kind of cat and mouse aspect of it, and I think to see Zach Kreger or somebody else associated with the movie try to take that on from that perspective.
With that act in the movie, you
almost
kind of
like
get
a
a little
noir
bit
type,
of it in
type
Barbarian.
story. Yeah.
So I think it's definitely one of those movies that would be really cool to see more around it for sure.
Of course. So that was Barbarian, and the second movie we saw that day, as we talked about, was Pearl, which is of course is the prequel to X. Of course, Pearl also directed by Ty West.
Yeah, chugging them out.
Yes, Ty West, like I mentioned previously, I know I've talked about him before. He's one of my all-time favorite directors, probably my favorite director to come out in the last 20 years. He's just got an incredible catalog of films. Yeah. So Ty West directed this one. He co-wrote this with star Mia Goth. Mm-hmm. And the story with Pearl is he started coming up with the backstory of Pearl. He and Mia Goth started talking more about the character's backstory on the set of X, and he immediately started writing the film. Yeah. And she joined in as well while they were on set. So they were literally on set shooting X and writing Pearl in their free time. I just think that's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, they conceptualized it together, decided to build out the character of Pearl, who you remember from X, was the murderous old lady that goes on a rampage killing fucking kids as they try to make a porno.
Woohoo!
Right. Brilliant movie, brilliant plot. Everything just fucking worked. Mm-hmm. So Pearl tells the story of the younger life of the old lady from X, our main antagonist, Pearl.
Yeah.
And we see her relationship with her husband, Howard, who we see, of course, in X.
Yes.
And so we get a little bit more of her story than we get Howard. So I wonder if Howard's story could also be a third part of that trilogy.
I almost wonder if Howard is just supposed to continue being a support character to keep the primary focus on the women.
Right. And I totally am in favor of that. I think Mia Goth carries this fucking franchise already.
She does. And, the fact that I watched the entire movie and didn't realize that she was also in makeup as the old woman.
Right. She's Max and she's Pearl.
Yeah. Terrifying to me. So the fact that you have her playing Maxine, Max, you have, Pearl as the old woman. But then in Pearl, obviously, she plays young old lady, Pearl,
Yeah.
who's got this weird kind of fucked up situation. It's 1918.
1918. Yep.
So it's in the middle of the Spanish flu
And
pandemic.
World War One.
And World War One. So very interesting to see. It's not so tongue-in-cheek anymore when there's a joke about wearing a mask out in public due to a flu, because obviously we've recently gone through that with the pandemic. So there's a lot that kind of carries into, with this movie coming out as of 2022 and on the tail end of, I mean, obviously it's still going on, but a pandemic.
Hopefully the tail end of the pandemic.
Yes. And, so we had all of the same people bitching about having to wear masks then as we do now, seeing people wearing them going into town. And, so there's a lot going on to build tension in the movie without even knowing the full, terror of Pearl herself.
Right, and I think that's one thing that Ty West definitely set out to do, and he and Mia Goth set out to do with these films, is there's unique and spectacular social commentary in these movies. As we see in X, the sex work is real work, basically, kind of that whole argument there.
Empowerment,
Exactly,
using
female
themselves to be
empowerment,
amazing.
female sexuality,
Yeah.
all of that.
Absolutely. And, you get that going into Pearl as well. And
Sexuality is a big theme of Pearl as well.
Yes. So, you've got young Pearl who she lives out on this farmhouse. Sounds like they're German settlers, from, or at least her parents anyway, with the way the mother talks. And there's a couple of, again, social commentary, war talk in that. And then her father, who sounds like he had come down with the flu and had lasting effects, who's basically paralyzed, quadriplegic in a chair, who has to be fed and given a nice spoonful of morphine.
Yeah, the commentary about how he is handled as well, being a victim of the Spanish flu, coming down with it. It really is. That's one of the things I love most about this movie, is that it can give those social cues and social statements in the midst of essentially a fucking slasher movie. It's like, people want to sit there and say that horror has never been political, but horror has always been political. That's the root of horror.
I wish I might have to look at it and see if I can find it, but I literally just came across, it's actually a recent guy that I think we've become mutuals with on TikTok. I'm really, really horrible with names and screen names. So, but I just saw a video on that about TikTok. People were talking about the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre being too political. And he points out all of these classic movies and the people who worked with them and how it's always been political.
Yes. Yeah. It's like when people talk about Fight Club and they're like, it's used to represent this kind of far right-wing concept. When you look at Chuck Palahniuk and what he's done, and David Fincher and their kind of philosophies, and how they're just the polar opposite of those ideals that these far-right groups hold to be dear.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And I think Pearl is able to take that, an argument that we have right now with the wearing the masks during a pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's able to take those stories and tell it again with the backdrop of this murderous psycho lady who we were introduced to earlier this year.
Yes. And can we just talk about, though, from beginning to end with this movie, he also gives us the same thing he did with X, whereas from the audio and the opening, everything is done to the style of the time. So you get that kind of big bandy, loud kind of music for the opening, with that the kind of the same few fonts that you would see for opening credit scenes and title cards.
Yeah, like those early Disney movies.
Yeah,
I always think of the movie Meet Me in St. Louis with Judy Garland. It's like it totally makes me feel like Pearl would have been a movie that would have been in theaters at the exact same time.
Right, exactly. Just the feel of it. Obviously, the part where she picks up her pitchfork in the barn and stabs it through a goose.
Oh, the goose
and
scene
then
is
goes
terrific.
and feeds it to the gator.
Yes. Oh yeah, we get Theta
That's
again.
how
The gator
title
from
card is, and
Yeah.
then it's like Pearl, and it's
Yeah.
all happy and delightful sounding.
Yeah, the gator from X is back. Theta, she's
Yes.
back for Pearl.
You get to see her a little smaller.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful to see, and but yeah, Pearl it takes this character who we were introduced to, and then lets us kind of get a glimpse of what made her so psychotic. Kind of those early days of Pearl discovering herself as a homicidal maniac.
Yes.
And it starts, they're on a farm. As Natalie said, she's living with her parents. They're German immigrants. And it's during World War I, where Germans were not, cared for because they were the enemies in that war as well. And Pearl, her husband, Howard, is overseas fighting the war. So she lives with her parents to help them out on their farm. And we even get this interesting moment where Pearl recalls meeting Howard. Howard was a farmhand helping out on their farm, and how she saw him as her ticket out of the farm, yet he liked being on the farm so much that he ended up deciding to stay and work for her family even after they were married.
Yeah.
And
she
it's
hated
just,
him for
she
that.
hated, and there's this beautiful, beautiful scene where she explains that too, that she actually hates Howard and resents him for all of that. So it's one of the greatest statements too in the movie is this.
It's like meeting a millionaire and being like, oh my God, I finally get to live in that mansion with that 1,000 square foot walk-in closet that's lined with bags and shoes. And then he's like, but I really want this 1-bedroom cabin by the lake in the woods. And that's not what you want. So like in relation to that, because it's not that they live in a small house, but they live on a farmhouse. So it's hard work. Not to mention, the situation she's clearly tired through the whole movie of taking care of her dad and resents him, which you get a very amazing, I'm trying to look, I don't remember the actress's name, but the mother for Pearl, she has this...
Actress's name is Tandy Wright.
Tandy Wright, okay. She has a really explosive scene where she kind of blurts out in front of the father that she resents him because she's stuck at that house taking care of him, and she wanted to be a wife, not a caretaker. And
I wanted to be his wife, not his mother.
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it is. It's emotional. The whole movie is emotional though, because you get the sense that, obviously like this explosive scene with Pearl's mother Ruth. They go back. They clearly have this contentious relationship, and it all comes to a head, and they finally. It's a great scene. It's storming. The cinematography is beautiful. It really does look like an old film from, it's obviously it takes place in 1918, but it looks like a film that was probably done in anywhere from the 40s to the 60s.
Yeah,
just that beautiful, beautifully visually done movie. But you get that explosive scene with them, but the whole relationship with them, how it builds is a really just the cornerstone of the whole movie.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that going into it, but the movie's main story is Pearl's rivalry with her mother.
Yeah, because she has it's almost like there's all of these things that are holding her down. So, you think she's just eager for her husband to get home, from the war, but then you realize that she's terrified of him coming home. And there's kind of a weird, freaky scene to symbolize that, where she takes this alligator egg, and she brings it into the barn, and you think she's going to try to keep it and raise this like little baby gator, but then she ends up going back up the ladder, grabbing the egg, and she's staring at it and staring at it and staring at it, and you see it, she starts squeezing. And it flashes to him what he's going to look like walking down the driveway of the farm. And then she squeezes the egg and it explodes and he explodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like she's trying to make that not happen. You know, she's willing it to not happen. She doesn't want him to come home. He's not going to be a ticket out anymore.
Right. But she also doesn't want to be where she's at. It's like
Right.
Pearl is in a no-win situation.
Yeah.
And
But
I
it's
think
one
that's
of the
what
things that's holding her down. Just
Right.
like you were talking about with the mother, with the father, with the farm. Everything is holding her there. It's almost like a guilt, like she can't leave them, so she has to just get rid of everything.
Yeah. That's it. And she meets this young man who's the projectionist of the movie theater in town. She will, Pearl's duties as the daughter of the family. She has to go into town, get the medication for her father, but she always tells her dad that she's going to use a little extra money and go see the cinema, the movies, and the pictures, if you will. And Pearl is in love with the movies. She's in love with the pictures. And she meets the projectionist of the movie theater, and they kind of have this little romance. And we see that Pearl is kind of sweet on him, and we learn that in a very disturbing scene with a scarecrow that we won't go into too much detail about, but you'll see for yourself.
Why not? So, funny enough, it's one of the things that almost got spoiled for me before I saw it.
Yeah.
There were a couple of clips circling TikTok. And I was like, no, was she climbing the scarecrow? And then I swipe real fast because I didn't want to see it. So going into the theater, besides what little we'd seen from the trailer, which we saw at the end of X, the after credits scene, a couple of things in between then in the last couple months. I hadn't seen anything for the Scarecrow until TikTok, like 2 days after it came out.
Yeah.
It's always a dangerous game being on there.
It is. Social media is a gamble when new movies come out.
Yeah. So going into the theater, I was just like, all I know is there's something with a fucking Scarecrow. And then I didn't realize it's something with a Scarecrow fucking. So she kind of has this romance
She
scene.
futhere's the Scarecrow.
I mean,
there's it is.
It's like
it is what it is.
Not literally. It's like, but she's acting it out. She's acting it out. But her pants stay on, so there's no weird shit.
There's an orgasm.
not-
I'm sorry. It's like that was like it's very clearly an orgasmic scene with a Scarecrow. What the fuck do you call that? She
I don't know,
fucks
man.
the Scarecrow.
It's a romance.
We're getting into like a Bill
scene.
Clinton discussion here. It's like, what constitutes sex with a scarecrow?
Oh my God.
I really don't think this is what. But yeah, no. So yeah, it is a very interesting scene. But
Yes.
in that, while she's fucking the scarecrow, she envisions the projectionist, who we don't know his name. He is literally just credited as the projectionist.
I'm always here for a character like that. First off, this guy, David Cornsweet. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce
Terrific
the tail end
actor.
of that. Very handsome man, very good image, I feel like, for this role. And he's got that kind of sweetheart, but kind of devious sexual side. He's talking about touring Europe, and he introduces her to dirty movies and shows her a porno.
He shows her a legitimate porn film.
So the porn theme carries over clearly from this movie into X as its predecessor, but
what seems like its successor is going to go into as
Right,
well, as we will get to.
Maxine.
Yes.
So, you have the same theme going, and she's kind of intrigued by it, but she just wants to get out. She wants to be famous. She wants to dance. She has the whole scene with the scarecrow. She's dancing with him. And
Before she fucks him.
it's her intro. She's in her bedroom wearing one of her mom's old pretty dresses and acting like an actress. And, so you have this whole thing going on with him, but then comes it's her sister-in-law.
Yes, yeah.
And mother
so as Natalie kind of touched upon earlier, Howard's family is very well off.
Yes.
And but he has chosen to stick around on the farm and kind of rejects that lifestyle. But the way we find out how affluent Howard and his family are is because his sister and his mother visit Pearl and her mother Ruth
To give them a hog.
and we see them. And they're giving them the
Big
pig,
roasted hog.
a roasted hog, and the sister-in-law is wearing this very nice fur around her neck,
she's
which
got, like,
for
a
the time, of
fox or
course,
whatever
yeah.
on. It's like a whole ass
Yeah.
animal. So for the time, like you're saying, the fur and the silk and this, pretty
Yes.
heels, and her, she's got these blonde curls on her head.
And even the fact that they've got a car, and obviously
Yeah.
Pearl and her family don't.
Yeah, Pearl rides a bike into town.
Right, exactly. So it's like there's a lot of signs that Howard's family is well off, and he has
Yeah.
rejected that life.
Yeah.
for this farm living with Pearl and her family. And Pearl wants the exact opposite, as we talked about. She wants the wealth, the fame, the fortune, all of it. So it's funny how we kind of see them at odds in X. They're married, but they feel very much like rivals in a way.
Absolutely.
The way Pearl and her mother feel like rivals.
There's a lot of resentment.
Yeah, it's like Pearl has a lot of resentment towards people in her life. Howard, her mother, even her father, she almost resents him for getting sick and like leaving her with her mother.
Yeah,
like that's the
she
thing.
sees him as another burden in her life.
He's a burden, and he's not doing anything to help the situation with her mother. He can't. He literally can't because he's sick.
Right.
So it's Pearl. Like the story of Pearl is resentment.
Yeah.
It is. That's the biggest theme throughout the whole film. But yeah, it's fantastic. The stories that they tell and the relationship she forms. What really sets all this off is her relationship with the projectionist, though. The projectionist, Pearl runs to him in the middle of the night after an episode with her mother, and there's a conflict with her and her mother, a very heated confrontation, and then she runs to the arms of the projectionist. They have a very intimate night, a little fling, and he takes her home. Yes. And as he realizes the situation there is not so good, and he tries to leave, and that's when Pearl takes that pitchfork and goes right through that motherfucker.
Yeah.
And it is, so you remember the scene from X where she, kills the guy with the pitchfork. We see her do the exact same thing here in Pearl. Yeah. It's fantastic how we get to see her, she has her comfort zone as a slasher, as a killer. Yeah. And it's she has her signatures, and the pitchfork has become, I feel like, her signature, and we really see that cemented here in this scene.
In the beginning, she kills the goose with the pitchfork, and it's in the barn, which obviously with X you have the scene where she kills the guy at the barn with the pitchfork.
Exactly.
So whenever I first saw her pick it up for the goose, I was like, ha, cool, pitchfork. And I didn't really think they were going to do it again. But yeah, she does. They have this moment. Obviously, I think everyone in the world knows the TikTok audio of her screaming and blowing up at him. Why are you leaving me?
Why don't you like me?
Yes. With her amazing, just crazy girl snapping. She's fucking phenomenal.
Fucking Mia Goth. Like, let's just go out, like, cards on the table.
Yeah.
Mia Goth has owned this year in horror with her performances as Max and Pearl.
Yeah.
Like, those two characters have, like, cemented in this year, 2022. Mia Goth came out of nowhere. And I say that, and, she was in A Cure for Wellness. She was in other films that people really liked. But this is where she really said, I'm going to fucking own it. Yeah. And she did.
Because her image from X as Maxine has just taken over. Obviously, Gen Z very into a lot of the classic styles, and it's interesting to see that they've taken it so much further than what I feel like we ever did. Like, I remember I was like 12 wearing my aunt's Woodstock shirt, and that'd probably be the coolest fucking thing now. But I've seen so many people adopt her style with her makeup, of that time in the 70s where you had these bright blue eyeshadows. And
the pastel kind of pinks.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love seeing how many people do it. Like, whether they're doing a video using like audio from her, or they're posting pictures and it's, kind of like her look. Just seeing people do their makeup and have that bright pop of color, especially if it's blue. Yeah. Like, it's just amazing. And seeing the people that do the cosplays and the makeup and stuff is phenomenal. But her look in X is iconic.
It is. And it has become iconic. I agree.
And now you have with Pearl, her hair up with those red bows, with that bright red dress, and her red lips.
The one from the poster. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so cool seeing how much just her look for even two different characters in two different movies have inspired so many people and so many horror movie lovers in their own day-to-day style.
Well, this is, for talk about horror movie lovers, this is what we've wanted. We wanted a new franchise.
Yeah.
We've been craving a new franchise. Yeah. I think it's like, that's the one thing that's been missing. We've had so many great moments in horror in the last 10 years, but we haven't had a franchise.
Right.
And while we're on the subject, it's like there will be a third film called Maxine. If you stuck around for the end after the credits, they tease the same way.
80s music. I'm gonna, guys. I have to tell you right now. No one else in the theater when we went and saw it stayed for the credits. I shamelessly pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the Maxine logo just because it's so nostalgic. I'm losing my fucking mind.
It's boss as fuck.
Because I'm an 85 baby, so I still grew up with a lot of that stuff around me. And just that, well, not porn, not that, but like the look of the logo.
Just the sleaziness of the 80s. That's what
like
that's one thing I always remember.
That Hollywood slum look. So it's so exciting, and I know I'm going to lose my mind with the looks for this movie, just with the way they did it, for the first two. But yeah, I think that's something that kind of blew our minds when we stuck around and we saw at the end of X that we were going to get Pearl within the same fucking year.
Yeah.
And
we don't know when Maxine's coming out necessarily,
right.
At least as of the recording of this episode.
Yeah.
But it is,
still,
it is.
like
We imagine it's going to be a quick turnaround as well.
It blew our minds. Everybody. I mean, everyone is super stoked to have two Ty West horror movies that are tied together within a year of each other.
Yeah, of course.
In the same year.
Yeah, I mean, Ty West, we thought he was done with film entirely because he had just done TV for like the longest time. Yeah. But, it's great to see him come back. It's great to see him come back with this way, and he's giving us so much. Like, first off, he's delivering his signature style, which we've, if you're a fan of, Ty West movies, it's a very distinct style that he has to all of his films. Yeah. He takes his time telling those stories. He's very much a slow burn director.
One of my favorites that I watched, I think it would have probably been last October, so about a year ago now, was when you showed me The Innkeepers.
Oh, Innkeepers, yeah.
And that
House
movie,
of the Devil.
Yeah, and House of the Devil. Both are movies that I feel like don't get talked about enough.
Oh, easily.
And I really hope that with a lot of people who, not only with, their age, who, because we're in our mid-30s, and, you're going to have younger people who are going and seeing these movies who it might be their kind of intro into some of the bigger horror movies.
Yes.
This could kick them off to horror, and they could be like, what else has this guy done? And then they see them. So, like, I want more people to be interested by being new to these movies.
You're hoping this is a gateway movie for these baby horror fans.
I was saying it a really long way.
No, I get you. No, that's totally it, though. It's like, you're absolutely right.
Because when I find a good movie and I'm like, damn, I like the way this is done. Who did this? And I want to see their other movies.
Of course.
So, I really hope for any of you guys who have seen X or Pearl and you haven't seen the House of the Devil, House of the Devil, or The Innkeepers, you need to go see them. It's one of the coolest satanic panic movies and coolest fucking ghost stories I've ever seen.
I'll throw out the Sacrament. Yes, the Sacrament.
Yeah,
the other movie.
Still haven't seen.
You haven't seen that, but it is. First off, it's found footage, so it's fucking
I've
dope.
Heard this, yes.
It's a great found footage movie. It deals with Jim Jones. Of fucking Jonestown Massacre.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a very great interpretation, adaptation, if you will, of the Jonestown Massacre in a found footage horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's as bonkers as it fucking sounds. And if you like X, if you like Pearl, check out, like we were talking about, check out some of his other movies, House of the Devil, The Innkeepers, The Sacrament. And I think he did one I haven't seen, one of his earliest films, The Roost.
I've not seen.
Haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
But it's one of his earliest works, and he's also was part of the ABCs of Death and Southbound, a lot of anthology flicks.
So I know he did ABCs of Death, but also one of my favorites is the one called The Second Honeymoon in VHS.
VHS,
and
yes. Oh my gosh.
Fucking love the VHS movies. We're literally losing our minds over VHS 99. I can't
wait.
But yeah, the Second Honeymoon one is a really creepy good one, and the VHS is amazing anyway. There's phenomenal amounts of people working in those movies, but he's got one segment in there, so you can at least probably find that and watch it if you don't care to watch the whole movie VHS.
But if you like Ty West's work though from X and Pearl, you'll love a lot of his other materials, and you can kind of see how it laid the groundwork for films like Pearl. And what he was able to accomplish with that. He's He's not really delved into slashers the way he did this year, though. So for him to
Right.
come back out of the gate with something he hasn't done before, Ty West really just knocked it out of the park with 2 remarkable slashers back to back in the same year. I mean, and what a year it's been for horror, which we're probably gonna do a whole 2022 year in review.
We'll have a countdown.
Yeah, it's
everyone else,
our
right?
New Year's episode is definitely going to be us
Horror
talking about the
countdown.
best of horror 2022 because we've just had a phenomenal year, and Ty
Yeah,
West
we
delivering
have.
2 of the best with X and with Pearl.
It's been an amazing year for movies, and there's so many. It's just about to be October as of recording this, and not only have we had obviously a lot of great releases with the 2 movies that we've seen dropping in September, but October is absolutely loaded across theatrical releases, Netflix, Shudder, and this is the time to get Shudder if you don't have it. It's like one of the cheapest subscription services out there. I pay under $10 for it, and there's so much good shit on there to watch.
Yeah,
including
and I was just
a lot of the movies that we've talked about. But there's so many amazing releases that are coming out on all of these platforms in October, even into November, past the spooky season, and so we have all this good shit.
Yeah, by the
before
time this
year even
episode
ends.
drops, it will be October 1st.
Yes.
So this should be dropping on October 1st.
Yes.
So it's spooky season, everybody.
Spooky
It's spooky
season.
month. Like Natalie said, get Shudder to indulge in all your horror movie loves, wants, and
I'm telling you
desires.
right now, I'm not sponsored, but guess what? Last year, I think it was, I got an advertisement or an email from them. I had done their trial once before, but I ended up not paying. And I got an email that had some like halfway to Halloween deal, and I paid like half price for 6 months, and I've kept it ever since. Not only are there always new movies on there, but there's always a couple channels just streaming a movie. So if you're indecisive, you can just turn it on, and there's a spooky movie on.
But you've got a catalog of so many great TV shows like
Yeah,
Creepshow,
TV
Joe
shows.
Bob Briggs
And
is
Joe
on
Bob
there.
Briggs.
That's the reason we got Shudder.
Yeah,
we got Shudder for Joe
It is.
Bob.
We got Shudder for Joe Bob, and we've gotten a lot of other people into Joe Bob. And so, I mean, we're not sponsored by Shudder, and I would love to be.
We are open to discussions, though.
But Shudder has been one of those places where, you get all of these really cool anthology movies. You get a lot of new releases. You get Shudder exclusives like Glorious that we just watched recently. Phenomenal, cool.
Yeah, another
Wild
great movie
movie
for 2022
Yeah.
that this year gave us.
But you also get, these old iconic movies.
Yeah, we watched House on Haunted Hill.
Watching the cut of Nosferatu that Joe Bob had was phenomenal because of the footage that got put together for it.
Right. They found the highest definition clips they could. Like, this was Shudder. Like, Shudder went out and found the highest definition clips they possibly could to make
the greatest version
the best
I've
cut.
ever seen of Nosferatu, and I've seen it a cajillion times since I was little. But there's just so much good stuff, old and new, the shows, the exclusives, and it's so much more worth it. I think it's probably the one that we go to over anything. But even if you just try the trial, it's spooky time. Like, they've got so many good shows on there.
Yeah, by the time you're listening to this, it's October. Get your shit together if you're a true horror fan.
Exactly.
Get Shudder. If you don't have Shudder, go on fucking Tubi. Tubi's got great horror movies.
Yeah, Tubi. And see, that's another shout out to the other Josh on TikTok, who always does the totally dope horror movie streaming for free right now videos. And there's always good shit on
I'm going to
Tubi.
give a shout out to Living Dead Delilah. She always gives me great picks.
Yeah.
Great picks for Tubi's movies. So, yes, absolutely. Some great creators out there have really been stepping up. We've always loved Tubi. Like, I know we got in early on Tubi, but to hear people recommending and giving shout outs for movies you can find on Tubi, it's such a great resource. And if you could tolerate a few commercials, which I can.
Right.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
They're not painful. They're not edited, versions of the movie or anything. And I don't know completely how we ended up where we are talking about, other than it's spooky season. And clearly,
we're wrapping up the episode. We're just kind of giving us some. We're just kind of giving some insight, some thoughts. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's October, and it's our favorite month of the year, our favorite time of the year.
That's why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
We're getting in spooky season. Come on.
So we're pumped, Super pumped.
Yeah.
Super excited. And we hadn't been to the theater for probably a month or so when we decided we had to kind of wait. You were out of town for a minute there.
Yeah. I was out of town for a few weeks.
And so it was nice to play catch up because everyone else was seeing these movies, and I wanted to join in on the fun.
Yeah, every time we'd open our phones, it was something about these movies.
Something
we
about
had
Pearl
to
or
see,
Barbarian.
had to see them. These had to be the first two we saw.
And the Barbarian hype does not disappoint.
Oh, it doesn't.
Whatsoever.
No, it doesn't.
And Pearl is a slasher in its own way, very different way from X, but you still get pitchfork action and axe chopping action and just a little bit of gator action, maybe some fire.
Oh yeah.
But it's different and it's perfect.
It is. It is a completely different movie from X, and I didn't expect it to be as different as it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I found it to be an amazing follow-up, a terrific prequel. Maxine sounds like it's going to be a sequel.
And they both stand alone, to be honest.
They really do. Like if you watched Pearl without having watched X, you would not be lost.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I think.
And you can
could
watch
go in
X,
blind.
and you have the scene where you see the old picture of her, and she does the freaky slow old lady twirl in the hallway. And you get that she used to be a dancer. Like, it's not hard to figure that out watching X.
Yeah.
So it's like, but you don't have to have Pearl's backstory to enjoy X.
Right. Which makes me really curious as to what Maxine's even going to be about. Because
Right.
obviously that's Maxine from X.
Our final girl, yeah.
Yeah, it's our final girl, and she's coming back, and it's the 80s, which was the time of slashers.
Right.
I'm
and
so fucking pumped.
a even bigger pornography bump. So
Oh
obviously,
yeah, well it's Maxine with three
with
X's.
three X's, and
Maxine.
you're gonna continue the pornography themes, which if it's 80s, we're fucking here for it. I think it's gonna be
80s porn is unlike any other porn. Come on.
I mean, if we can all sit next to strangers in the theater while people had sex in a barn, I think I can deal with anything else.
Yeah, I choose not to think about it like that. Like, it's like probably the closest I'll ever come to being in an adult theater. It was it's bonkers. Because they're making a porn, and you're watching the narrative of a porn being made. It's wild.
Is quite graphic.
It is quite graphic.
Than
Yeah.
Pearl.
Yeah, Pearl has some sexuality, but
Oh,
it's
for sure.
it's the theme of sexuality is very secondary to it, which makes me wonder if that was Mia Goth's influence on this versus
I don't know.
X.
I think it's just that it wasn't as her focus, because she's like, I want to be a dancer. She wasn't quite corrupt completely.
Right, not like
You
the
know?
heithens in
Right.
fucking X.
Yeah.
Making their pornography.
Exactly. Meanwhile, he's
Making
just
the
like,
pornographies.
even though he's, the projectionist, he's just kind of like, oh, you could go to Europe and everyone does
That's a
this,
very
and
tense scene too.
it is
the
a tense
where-
scene. You
yeah.
don't quite know how to feel, because
Yeah.
she's just like, I don't
There's some
it's
themes
weird.
there too of just like another one like Barbarian, where it's like, don't trust men.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so that's kind of as we're wrapping up the episode here, it's like it was a great double feature, very similar themes in both of the movies, but also very different independently of themselves. And it's October, it's spooky season. Go out and find one of these services.
Yeah.
Watch as many fucking horror movies as you can.
And tell us about them, so we
Tell
can
us,
watch 'em.
yeah, horrorzoidpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Go to horrorzoid.com. Find us on TikTok. Reach out to us any way you can. We want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Comment on YouTube. We love it. We love to hear
do.
about it. And it's spooky season. So another thing we want to hear about, send us your ghost stories. Send us your haunted house stories. We want to hear
Yes.
about it all. If we
would
get
love listen, you guys. Serious moment here. I love ghost stories. I love paranormal. I don't even care if you're fucking lying. Just if you write me a good story I can read, just send it to me.
Yeah. We don't
Send
care if
it-
it's fiction, nonfiction. Send it our way.
Right. You can reach out.
Blur the lines between reality.
We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. You can email us at horrorzoidpod@gmail.com. Send us your ghost stories. I want to read them. And if you guys send us enough, we can make an episode for Halloween.
we can do it on the air.
Yes.
Yeah, so send us. It's spooky
We
season.
could even
send
live
us,
stream it, guys.
Yeah.
Come on.
We're on TikTok. We've got over 1,000 followers. We can live.
Thank you
we can
guys
do live
for that,
this
by
shit.
the way,
Yes.
because we haven't gone live yet. We haven't figured out what to necessarily do. But the fact that you guys have gotten us to where we are humble and thankful, and we love you
Yes,
guys.
yes.
You're awesome.
So yes,
Our Zoids are the best.
Zoids are the best. But yes, please send us whatever you've got because we're excited. It's October. We're ready for spooky season. We're gonna tell our haunted house stories, our ghost stories on the air.
Absolutely.
We're gonna do all of that this month and more. So please stick with us. It's the greatest month of the year, and we're ready for it. We hope you're ready for it. And without further ado, we're gonna leave you with this. I will not accept a life I do not deserve. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every weekend. Follow us on TikTok at HorrorZoidPod and send emails to horrorzoidpod@gmail.com with your thoughts, questions, and stories for us to read on a future episode. To all our Zoids out there, stay scary.